Jermaine Davis had worked the night shift at the Midtown Inn for almost 2 years. It wasn't the fanciest hotel in the city, but it paid the bills. He didn't mind the quiet hours or the long nights. In fact, he liked the peace that came after. The hustle of the day was gone. Most people were asleep and the lobby was calm. It gave him time to think. Jermaine was a tall young man in his late 20s with kind eyes and a calm voice. He always wore his navy blue hotel uniform neatly pressed with his name tag shining on his chest. He wasn't the type to seek attention. He just wanted to do his job, treat people kindly, and make it through the night. It was a cold December evening, the kind where the wind slips through your jacket no matter how tight you zip it. Snow had been falling on and off all day, and by midnight the sidewalks outside were icy and slick. Jermaine had just finished wiping down the front desk when he noticed movement outside the glass doors. At first, he thought it was a guest stepping out for fresh air. But when he looked again, he saw a man sitting against the wall near the side entrance, just out of sight from the main street. He was wrapped in a thin blanket that was soaked from the melting snow. His beard was long and unkempt, and his clothes were torn in places. He looked tired, cold, and very hungry. Jermaine paused for a moment. He had seen homeless people before. The hotel was near a busy downtown area, and people in need often wandered the streets. Usually, he would gently ask them to move along if they got too close to the entrance. That was the rule. But something about this man made Jermaine stop. He looked again and saw the man's hands shaking as he tried to light a small cigarette. His fingers were blue from the cold. Without thinking too hard, Jermaine grabbed a cup and poured some hot coffee from the lobby machine. He added 2 sugars and a dash of cream, how he liked it himself, and walked to the door. "Hey man, you okay out here?" Jermaine asked gently as he stepped outside, holding out the steaming cup. The man looked up, surprised. His eyes were red and tired. For a moment, he didn't say anything, then nodded slowly. "I'm fine," the man said, his voice rough and dry. "Just trying to warm up a bit." Jermaine handed him the coffee. "Here, it's cold tonight. Thought this might help." The man took the cup with shaking hands. He sipped it slowly, closing his eyes as the warmth spread through his body. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Jermaine leaned against the doorframe. "No problem. You need a place to stay?" The man let out a short laugh, not unkind. "Just tired. Don't got one. Been out here a while." They stood in silence for a moment. Jermaine looked at the snow falling under the streetlight. He had a job to do, rules to follow, cameras above the front desk watching everything. But he couldn't ignore what he saw in front of him. This man wasn't dangerous, he was just someone who had fallen on hard times. "What's your name?" Jermaine asked. "Rick," the man replied. "Rick Walters. Used to be somebody." Jermaine raised an eyebrow. "Used to be?" Rick nodded. "Marine Corps. Served 15 years. Then came home. Things didn't go so smooth. Lost my job, my house, then my family. Now I'm out here." Jermaine's heart tightened. His uncle had served in the military too, and he always spoke of how hard the adjustment was after coming home. "You shouldn't be out here like this," Jermaine said quietly. Rick smiled, though there was pain behind it. "Lot of us out here, man. World keeps spinning." Jermaine looked back into the lobby. It was empty. No guests, no managers. Just quiet. He thought about the empty room on the second floor. Room 2 on 12. It hadn't been booked that night. Technically, it was off limits, but clean and ready. Jermaine hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision in his chest. It was against hotel policy. If someone found out, he could lose his job. But could he really walk back inside and pretend he hadn't seen Rick? He made up his mind. "Come with me," Jermaine said. Rick looked confused. "What?" "Just for tonight. I got a room upstairs. It's empty. You can sleep there, take a hot shower, rest a bit. I'll even bring up some food from the break room." Rick stared at him in disbelief. "You serious?" Jermaine nodded. "Don't get used to the room service, though." For the first time, Rick smiled a full smile. It lit up his tired face. "You're a good man." "Don't say that yet," Germain replied. "I might be cleaning toilets tomorrow." They walked inside together, quietly and quickly. Germain led Rick to the back stairwell and up to room 212. He unlocked the door, handed him a clean towel from the supply cart, and pointed to the bathroom. "There's soap, shampoo, all that. I'll bring some snacks in a bit." Rick stood in the doorway, still holding the coffee cup. "I don't know what to say." "Say it after you've slept," Germain said with a nod. "Get warm. You're safe here tonight." As the door closed, Germain stood in the hallway for a long moment. He felt nervous, but also something else, something stronger. Peace. He walked back to the lobby, unsure of what tomorrow would bring, but knowing he had done something that mattered. He didn't know yet that this single act of kindness would change everything. The next morning, Germain arrived home from his night shift a little more tired than usual. He didn't get much rest during work, always checking the hallway camera to make sure everything was fine with room 212. Rick had gone to sleep peacefully, and nothing unusual had happened. Still, Germain's thoughts were busy. He wondered if he had done the right thing. He knew it was against hotel rules, but something deep inside told him it had been worth it. After all, helping someone who was freezing out in the snow didn't seem like something bad. He hoped his small act of kindness would simply go unnoticed. He told himself it was just one night and nobody would even care. But when he returned to the hotel later that day to pick up his check, he felt a strange energy in the air. The front lobby was quieter than usual. He nodded to the evening clerk, on duty, but the man didn't smile back the way he normally did. Germain walked toward the back office, holding his breath a little, sensing that something wasn't right. As he reached the office door, the manager, Mr. Grayson, stepped out. He was in his mid-40s, always serious, with a trimmed mustache and polished shoes. Germain had never had any problems with him before. But this time, the look on Mr. Grayson's face wasn't friendly. "Germain, can I see you for a moment?" he asked, holding the door open. Germain nodded slowly and stepped inside. The office smelled like fresh coffee, and the blinds were halfway shut. Mr. Grayson sat behind his desk and pointed for Germain to take the seat across from him. On the desk, a folder lay open, and a laptop screen showed security footage paused at a frame. Germain immediately recognized the picture. It was him helping Rick through the side door. Mr. Grayson sighed and folded his hands. "You want to tell me what happened last night?" Germain's heart sank, but he kept his voice calm. "There was a man outside. Homeless. He looked sick. I gave him a room that wasn't booked. Just for the night. I didn't think it would hurt anyone." "You know the rules," Mr. Grayson said. "We can't have unregistered guests. It's a security risk. Liability. This isn't a shelter." "I know," Germain said quietly. "But he's a veteran. He served the country. He had nowhere to go. It was freezing." Mr. Grayson leaned back in his chair. "I'm not questioning your heart. I know you meant well, but this is a business. We have policies. What you did, no matter the reason, puts us in a difficult position." Germain didn't say anything for a moment. He felt a knot form in his stomach. He had been working here faithfully for nearly 2 years, never missed a shift, never caused a problem. And now, he was being told that helping someone had crossed a line. "I understand," he finally said. Mr. Grayson stood up and walked to the filing cabinet. He pulled out a final paycheck and placed it in an envelope. "I have to let you go, Germain. I'm sorry. I'll write you a reference. Your work has been solid up until now. But this is something I can't overlook." Germain took the envelope and nodded slowly. He stood up, trying to hold back the wave of disappointment rising inside him. There were no harsh words, no yelling. Just a quiet end to something that had been part of his daily life for 2 years. He walked out of the office with the envelope in one hand and his heart heavy in his chest. As he passed the lobby desk, he looked back once. He didn't see any of the usual warmth or welcome in the place anymore. It just looked like a cold building with rules written on paper. Outside, the winter air hit him like a reminder. He walked slowly down the sidewalk, not sure what to do next. He didn't even have a plan. All he had done was try to help someone for one night. And now, he was jobless. When he got home, he sat on the edge of his bed, looking at the paycheck. It would cover a week or two at most. He thought about his mother, who counted on him to help pay the bills. He thought about Rick and wondered where he had gone after checking out that morning. And he thought about how quickly things could change in a single day. He didn't sleep much that night, not because he was angry, but because he felt confused. Doing something good had led to something bad, and that didn't make sense to him. Should kindness come with punishment? Later that evening, as he scrolled through his phone to look for new job openings, he got a message from an old high school friend. It was a screenshot of a Facebook post. At first, Jermaine didn't recognize what he was seeing. Then he saw the picture. It was him, standing at the hotel's front door with Rick handing him the cup of coffee. The post was from a woman who had been staying at the hotel the night Jermaine helped Rick. She had seen the whole thing from her room and took a photo from her window. In the caption, she wrote, "This hotel clerk did something amazing. I saw him help a homeless veteran on one of the coldest nights of the year. Gave him coffee, gave him shelter. A real act of kindness. I just found out he got fired. We need more people like him, not fewer." Jermaine stared at the post in shock. There were already thousands of likes, hundreds of shares, and dozens of comments from people praising him for his heart. Some called him a hero, others offered to help. Many were outraged that he lost his job. He didn't know what to think. In the quiet of his room, after such a hard day, this unexpected light brought a strange feeling of hope. Maybe his story wasn't over. Maybe, just maybe, this one night of kindness would mean more than he ever imagined. Jermaine woke up the next morning to the sound of his phone buzzing nonstop. At first, he thought it was an alarm or maybe a friend trying to reach him. But when he checked, he was shocked. He had over 50 text messages, more than 30 missed calls, and his social media notifications were overflowing. Something big had happened overnight. Still feeling a little sleepy, Jermaine sat up in bed and opened his messages. Most of them were from people he hadn't spoken to in years. Friends from school, old co-workers, and even people he didn't know were sending him messages of support. One message read, "You're trending, bro. You really did something special." He scrolled through the posts. The photo of him helping Rick outside the hotel had spread far beyond that one Facebook page. It was now on Twitter, Instagram, and even some local news sites. People were sharing his story with comments like, "This young man has more heart than most CEOs. Would you fire someone for being human? This hotel did. He helped a veteran and he paid the price for it. Not fair." At first, Jermaine didn't know how to feel. It was strange seeing his face everywhere. He had never looked for attention. He just wanted to do what felt right that night. But now, the world had seen what he did, and many people were speaking up for him. Later that day, one of the local news stations reached out for an interview. They wanted to talk to him about what happened. Jermaine wasn't sure. He had never been on camera before. But after thinking about it, he decided to say yes. Maybe telling the story would help others understand that kindness should never be punished. A reporter named Maria came to his apartment that evening. She brought a small camera crew and a friendly smile. She asked Jermaine to walk her through the night he helped Rick. Jermaine sat on his couch, speaking slowly and honestly. He told her about seeing Rick out in the cold, how the man looked so tired and hopeless, how something just told him he couldn't ignore it. "I didn't plan to break the rules," Jermaine explained. "I just saw a human being who needed help. The room was empty. I thought, why not use it to help someone who really needed it, even just for one night?" Maria nodded as he spoke. Her voice was warm and calm when she replied. "And when they let you go, how did that feel?" Jermaine looked down for a moment before answering. "It hurt, not just because I lost my job, but because it felt like I did something wrong by caring. I didn't expect anything in return. I just couldn't leave him out there in the snow." The interview aired that same night. Soon after, even bigger, news outlets began calling. People from all over the country were reaching out. Some offered him job opportunities. Others wanted to donate to help him. A few even asked about Rick, where he was, how he was doing. That's when Jermaine realized something else. Rick had disappeared the next morning without saying goodbye. Jermaine had hoped to see him again, maybe check in on him, but he hadn't had the chance. Now people were asking about Rick just as much as they were asking about Jermaine. Thankfully, the online community is strong when it comes to helping others. A few days after the story went viral, someone spotted Rick near a shelter downtown. A volunteer recognized him from the photo and reached out. Soon, a local organization that supports veterans found Rick and brought him in. When they reunited Jermaine and Rick, it was a moment that touched everyone who watched. Rick was wearing clean clothes and looked better than before, but his eyes were still filled with emotion. "You didn't have to help me," Rick said during their reunion. "But you did. That night saved me in more ways than you know." Jermaine smiled. "You helped me too, Rick. More than you realize." The reunion was filmed by one of the news channels and posted online. It became one of the most shared videos of the week. People were moved by the simple friendship between a hotel clerk and a homeless veteran, two people from different walks of life, brought together by one small act of kindness. The hotel where Jermaine used to work released a short statement a few days later. It said that while they respected his intentions, they stood by their policy. But by that time, public opinion had already formed. Most people felt the hotel had made a poor choice, and Jermaine, he had already become a symbol of something bigger. As the days went by, more offers came in. A local bakery offered him part-time work. A church community sent groceries to his home. A group of veterans sent him a thank you letter signed by more than 100 former service members. They said what he did meant the world to them, that someone saw a veteran not as a problem but as a person. One of the most surprising messages came from a woman named Sheila Matthews. She ran a nonprofit organization that helped homeless veterans get back on their feet. She had read Jermaine's story and wanted to meet him. They talked over video chat first. Sheila was strong, warm, and deeply passionate about helping others. "You have something rare, Jermaine," she told him. "A heart that listens. We need people like you. Would you consider working with us?" Jermaine was quiet for a moment. It all felt like a dream. Just a few days ago, he was sitting on his bed wondering what to do. And now someone was offering him a chance not just to work, but to make a difference. He smiled. "Yes, I'd love that." And just like that, the story that started with one cold night outside a quiet hotel began to take a new turn. One that neither Jermaine nor Rick could have seen coming. Jermaine sat by his window the morning after his video call with Sheila Matthews. The city outside was still cold, but something in his life had started to warm up. The past week had felt like a movie, one where everything turns upside down, and somehow in the middle of all the noise, something beautiful begins to grow. He still couldn't believe it. One simple act, offering a room to a homeless man, had changed everything. He had lost his job, yes. But what he had gained in return felt bigger than anything he could have imagined. Later that week, Sheila invited Jermaine to visit the headquarters of her nonprofit organization, New Pathways, which helped homeless veterans. It was located on the edge of town in a bright, welcoming building with large windows and a mural painted on the side wall that read, "Everyone deserves a second chance." When Jermaine walked in, he was greeted with warm smiles and handshakes. The staff, many of them veterans themselves, already knew who he was. A few even told him that his story reminded them of people they had once known. People who had lost everything but found hope because someone cared. Sheila showed him around. The center. There was a job training room filled with computers, a counseling space where people could talk through their struggles, and even a small kitchen where meals were prepared daily for those in need. "This place is about more than shelter," Sheila explained. "It's about rebuilding lives. We want every person who walks in here to know they matter." Jermaine nodded, taking it all in. He felt something stir in his heart. He had always worked quietly behind a front desk. He never thought of himself as someone who could make a difference in people's lives. But now, standing in this space, filled with hope, he began to believe he had something real to offer. Sheila smiled at him. I'd like you to join our team, Jermaine. Start by helping in outreach. Meet people, listen to their stories, help guide them toward the right support. We'll train you, and if you're open to it, we'll even help you go back to school, social work, community leadership, whatever feels right for your path. Jermaine was speechless for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, I want to do that. His first day started the following Monday. At first he was nervous, he wasn't used to talking so much, but soon he found that his quiet nature helped people open up. He listened with patience, nodded gently, and spoke when it mattered. Many of the people who came to the center were used to being ignored or judged, but with Jermaine they felt seen. One man, a Navy veteran named Carl, shared how he ended up living in his car after losing his job during the pandemic. Another, a woman named Tony, said she had been trying to reconnect with her children after years of struggling on the streets. Jermaine didn't have all the answers, but he offered them what they needed most: kindness and time. Back at home, things were changing too. Donations sent by people who had read his story helped him and his mother get ahead on rent and bills. A local grocer gave them gift cards. People sent letters not just from the city but from all over the country. Some were short, others pages long. All of them had one message: thank you for caring. But the most heartwarming change was Jermaine's growing friendship with Rick. They stayed in touch after the reunion. Rick had been staying at a veteran shelter and was slowly rebuilding his life too. He had joined a support group and was working part-time at a mechanic shop. One Saturday, Jermaine and Rick met up at a small park near the river. The air was cool, but the sun was out. They sat on a bench sipping hot tea and talking like old friends. "You look better, man," Jermaine said, smiling. Rick laughed. "I feel better. Haven't had a roof over my head in years without worrying someone's gonna kick me out." Jermaine nodded. "You deserve it, I'm proud of you." Rick turned serious. "I never said this properly, but that night, you didn't just give me a room. You gave me hope. I was about done. I didn't see a reason to keep going. Then, you showed me that someone still cared. That changed everything." Jermaine looked away for a moment, trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. "Sometimes it just takes one moment." Rick smiled. "One moment and one brave soul." As the days passed, Jermaine's story continued to inspire others. Sheila invited him to speak at community events. He wasn't used to standing in front of crowds, but he did it anyway, sharing his experience, always humbly. He didn't talk about being a hero. He just spoke from the heart. One night, during a small gathering at the community center, a woman in the audience raised her hand after Jermaine finished speaking. "What do you think your life would be like if you hadn't helped Rick that night?" she asked. Jermaine paused. He thought about the question for a long moment, then he said, "Honestly, I think I would have just kept going. Same job, same routine. Nothing bad, but nothing full either. Helping Rick, that was the first time I felt like what I did truly mattered. It showed me that small actions can lead to something big, and that kindness is never wasted, even if it costs you something." The room was quiet. Then, gentle applause filled the space. Jermaine walked home that night under a sky full of stars. He thought about the journey, from a quiet hotel lobby to this new chapter in his life. He didn't have everything figured out yet, but he knew one thing for sure: kindness had changed his life. And maybe, just maybe, it could change the world too. Months passed and life for Jermaine began to feel full of new purpose. Every morning he woke up not just to go to work, but to do something that felt meaningful. His days were now spent at the New Pathways Center, meeting with veterans, helping them find resources and guiding them toward a better future. He had grown from being a hotel clerk who worked quietly behind a desk to someone people looked up to, someone who others turned to for hope. It still felt a little strange to him sometimes, but he was learning to accept that what he did mattered. His act of kindness had started a chain reaction, and it hadn't stopped. One afternoon, Jermaine was invited to a large community event at the city's civic center. It was a gathering meant to honor local heroes, people who had made a difference in their neighborhoods. At first, he didn't want to go. He didn't see himself as a hero. But Sheila encouraged him. "You didn't. Just help one man," she said with a smile. "You reminded the whole city that kindness still exists. That's something worth celebrating." So he went. He wore a simple dress shirt and a calm smile, just like always. The hall was full of people from all walks of life. Community leaders, teachers, nurses, veterans, and students. The mayor spoke about how small acts of compassion were the heart of any strong city. Then, to his surprise, Jermaine's name was called. He walked up to the stage slowly, not quite believing it was happening. People clapped as he took the microphone. He looked out at the crowd and took a deep breath. "I didn't plan to be here," he began. "I didn't set out to get attention. I just saw someone who needed help and I did what felt right." He paused, the room quiet and listening closely. "That night I didn't know what would happen next. I was scared, honestly. I lost my job. I wondered if I'd made a mistake. But then I learned something powerful. Kindness might not always be easy, but it always has value. One small act can lead to 1,000 more." When he finished, people stood and clapped again, some with tears in their eyes. Jermaine stepped off the stage, feeling something in his heart he couldn't describe. It was like peace, pride, and humility all at once. In the weeks that followed, Jermaine became even more involved in helping others. With Sheila's guidance, he started working on a new project, a hotel partnership program that encouraged hotels across the city to work with shelters and veteran support groups. The idea was simple. Instead of letting rooms stay empty, hotels could offer short-term stays to people in urgent need, especially veterans. To his surprise, several hotels said yes. Not every hotel agreed, but the few that did were enough to start making a difference. Jermaine helped train their staff, teaching them how to handle situations with empathy and care. His own experience helped him understand the fears hotels had, but also the potential good they could do. The program was named Room for Respect. It grew slowly but surely, and within months, several veterans had already been helped through temporary stays that gave them the time and space to get back on their feet. Meanwhile, Rick was doing better too. He continued working at the mechanic shop and even began speaking at veteran support groups, sharing his story. He often told people about the night Jermaine helped him and how that moment gave him the strength to start over. One day, Rick surprised Jermaine with something special. It was a small plaque made of wood and metal. On it were engraved the words, "Kindness doesn't need a reason. It only needs a heart." Jermaine smiled when he read it. "Where'd you get this?" Rick chuckled. "Made it myself. Thought your office wall could use something better than a calendar." Jermaine hung it right above his desk at the New Pathways Center. Every time he saw it, he remembered that snowy night and how one small choice had led to everything else. 1. Evening, Jermaine sat at home with his mother. They were eating dinner together, something they hadn't had time to do often before. She looked at him proudly. "You've changed, Jermaine," she said softly. He looked up. "Good or bad?" She smiled. "Good. You've always had a kind heart, but now it shines through everything you do." He didn't say much in return, just smiled and nodded. But deep inside, her words meant the world to him. As the year came to an end, Jermaine was invited to share his story at a national conference for nonprofit leaders. It would be his first time flying out of state, his first time speaking to such a large group. He was nervous but ready. Before boarding the plane, he looked back on all that had happened. A year ago, he was working night shifts, blending into the background, unsure of what his future held. One decision, a simple act of kindness, had changed the path of his life forever. He didn't become rich. He didn't become famous. But he became something better, a light for others to follow. And though he never asked for it, Jermaine had become proof that in a world that often feels too busy, too cold, or too distant, there's still room for kindness. And that one moment of compassion really can shape a lifetime of purpose.